Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today I've got a real treat for all of us. Dr. Tameka Bryant is an amazing woman who grew up literally in the Bronx, kind of a rough start to life, yet she has taken every disadvantage, completely flipped it around, turned it into an incredible advantage. I literally could introduce her for the entire podcast. I don't want to waste a lot of time. I'm going to let her do some talking and introduce herself a little bit and where she was and where she's coming from. Tameka, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too. We do have a little bit of a history. We got to hang out at a ranch together, of all places. Who would have ever thunk it? So Tameka, tell me kind of just a brief about your upbringing and what that was like being in the Bronx.
Oh, well, I always tell people I didn't know there was much going on outside of the Bronx. When you grow up in a city like New York, and especially in your own community, you have everything right there, so you can walk to your doctor's office, walk to a bunch of stores and things like that. And so I thought everything was okay, in terms of where I was, until I started branching out a little bit and going to my family's houses, extended family and things like that. So it wasn't until I was about the age of 7 or 8 did I realize that there was other things happening outside of the Bronx. But growing up, I was kind of sheltered because I was the firstborn. And so when you're born into a family of, I always say it was organized chaos, but I didn't really know. So I didn't know I was, in the mix of so much crazy going on until I got older.
That's pretty common. Kids don't know. They don't know anything except for what they're brought up in.
I told someone the other day, I was like, it wasn't until certain times when I got older did I even think, I mean, there were memories of things that were happening when I was very small, like as early as the age of 2, but it didn't connect with me until I was around 17 or 18 and was able to ask my mom, like, hey, did this happen? So I really didn't know that even at age 2, I was literally in the middle of all kinds of trauma and didn't know.
That's very. I know it's kind of a paradigm for people that don't understand. Like there are truck drivers that have dogs or cats, and those dogs or cats have never been out of the cab of that truck, and they don't know that there's anything else. And so, how did you go from this incredibly sheltered life and not knowing? What was the first aha that made you go, "Oh, wait, it's not like this
Well,
everywhere"?
it was a combination. So, Kara, what was happening for me as a young um, child is that I lived in the house with my mom and dad, who were functioning addicts. And then I would go to my grandparents' house, who were, it wasn't necessarily the total opposite. They were, they just had a different lifestyle, but I always say it was an illegal fairy tale kind of lifestyle. So really quickly, my grandmother worked for Bronx mob bosses. And I did not know, of course, as a kid, you just kind of go with the flow. So I would go from, going to school at my mom's in my mom's area or living over there. And then I would go to my grandmother's. And for a period of time, I was going to school where in my grandmother's neighborhood. So if you can imagine a kid who is in the fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, going to their grandmother's house, taking two New York sub buses to get on the bus to go to the grandmother's house. I go to my grandmother's house, grab $100 cash bill, go to the school, have all kind of snacks for my friends. And this was a daily thing. Just grab $100 and, you know, in the fourth or fifth grade. So I didn't really see that that was a problem or an issue or should be a red flag because as a kid, I had money, I had snacks, and life was great as far as I knew. little did I know that I was in the middle of all of this, stuff happening that little kids shouldn't really be around, right? It was very much so, for me, it was kind of wild when I step back and look at it now, because my parents, who were both on heroin, and they were functioning. So my dad was also an alcoholic, and my mom maintained a full-time supervisor role at a hospital. And, so I didn't really know what was all happening, even though there was the constant fighting that I would awake to and things like that. So it was just really a weird place to be for a kid. And I manifested a lot of that and held on to a lot of that. And I didn't know. So growing up in that kind of environment made me very angry. And, as I was learning different things about what was happening, and I didn't really have many outlets. So I would find other places to go and other things to do outside of the house, which led me to some organizations. I was probably around 12 or 13, and I started getting around people and organizations that, were doing positive things for youth. And at 13 is where I started learning how to write grants.
Oh, girl. Okay, the whole podcast just totally changed right there. I mean, how powerful is that?
When you asked where did it start, it was like that was a turning point for me.
And how encouraging is that for people who work with children to hear that this is who you were, and at 12 or 13, because of their love and their selflessness, you have turned into a woman who has massively impacted countless lives. And we'll get into that. Please, guys, hang on, because this lady is a game changer. She's doing it all. Okay, so you start going, you're 12, you're 13, they're starting to show you different things. What started to change in you as a result?
Well, the great thing was, even with my grandmother and all the stuff that was going on, the 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 education that they instilled in me was mimicked at these organizations, which was, don't worry about what we're doing, is what they would say. Don't look at us, be better than us, right? And this is how you work with people, and the character of people is what counts, and the ethics of people is what counts, and allow people to show up exactly who they are and accept them as who they are. So if they show up, and take them for what they bring. So if they came into your life and they were good people and treating you well, then you reciprocate that. And it doesn't matter about the color of their hair or their skin. And so I found an organization that was saying the same thing, and people who were adults who were saying the same thing. And I got around kids who were doing the same thing. But when I met, there was a woman at this organization, and she was working a full-time job. She was a conductor on a metro line, like a subway. So
Mm-hmm.
she would come into work and be exhausted. And very inquisitive kid, I started reading what she was doing, and she was writing the reports for grants that the organization was giving. And so I decided, let me help her, because she was falling asleep and she had these reports due, and I was curious. And so I started writing the monthly reports for those grants. And then once I did that, I started wanting to know more of, how did this connect to that? And then how does this connect to this? And before I knew it, I was writing grants, and I started really getting heavily into it at around 16. And I started writing my own programs for youth who were younger than me. And I would go down and call up the executive directors and say, hey, I have a group here. We have programming, and I really figured out how to match the monies to the grants. And so all of that is how I started in that career and started working and was sought after and recruited to the National Association in Atlanta when I was in my early 20s, because I was able to write government grants and get government grants. And we wound up having an $80 million appropriation with this organization back then. So I was brought in to continuously get funds for the projects that I was writing and working on.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. So, okay, so in those years, that's typically when people are in college. How did that happen for you?
So when I went to college, I went around when I was around 17 to a summer program, St. John's University. And that was really, I was in high school. I went to DeWitt Clinton High School, and I never forget the counselor told me that I shouldn't apply to St. John's because I wasn't going to get in. And I was like, well, why wouldn't I get in? I'm an A student. I was in a program to be a doctor. So I was like, well, why wouldn't I get into St. John's? And so she just was like, oh, no, you should go somewhere else, and just deterred me. And so that's what put me on a path to go find out why couldn't I get in. And so make a long story short, I got in. But I
Yes.
had to emancipate myself from my parents. I moved out of my parents' house in order to do this. And, I figured out how to get onto that campus. And a year and a half into being on that campus, my favorite uncle, my closest uncle, died. And when he passed, I quit school. And I just said, hey, I don't want to do this. He did everything the right way. He went to college, and I was going after doing the things he was doing. And when he died, it devastated our entire family. And so I quit college and didn't go back for a while. So that's kind of what happened. And I just kept working at these organizations and put my head down and kept learning about grants and programs and got better at that. But it wasn't intentional. It was just really to fill that void, that he wasn't there, because I'd call him up and say, hey, this is going on. And he'd come and help me. And he was around 10 years older than I was. So he taught me to drive and all of these things. And, the way life kind of works, that's what happened. And he actually died in on which would be Halloween night. So I remember going out and then letting me know after a Halloween party that my uncle had passed. So that's that's one of the turning points of what kind of got me off of the track of going to school and doing what I was supposed to do. And I eventually circled back and got it all done.
Well, okay. So when you circled back, because I have a ton of respect for anyone who has a college degree of any sort, let alone someone who went back later to finish. What did that look like? How much college did you have when you went back?
So the thing that had me go back is I pretty much got really upset. I was working in that organization where I learned to write these grants, and I had gotten a $500,000 money contract from this city for youth programming, and the organization I was with would not hire me on a full-time basis because I did not have a degree. Now, meanwhile, I am in charge of 5,000 youth and employing 5,000 youth in 5 boroughs. And I'm doing the work of someone with a college degree, but you're not going to pay me because I don't have this degree. So I said, okay. And I stepped over and I quit the position, and they brought someone in with a college degree. And I said, well, I'm going to go back to school. And I negotiated for them to pay for my school books and some other things. And also down to if I got A's, then I would get everything covered, and just some things I knew that they wouldn't think of. And then while that was going on, my husband, who's my husband now, came up to me and he said, you're a very attractive a woman, but you'd be a lot more attractive if you had a degree.
No, he
So if
didn't.
you could understand that I'm really peed off at him and the job and the world for taking my uncle, I went back with a vengeance. And I had a equivalent of a year and a half of credits that were under my belt. And I found a program that was for adults. So I would be able to go at night. I didn't have to quit the job or anything like that. And I never forget, I went to the dean and I said, look, I got to get through this. I need my credits to transfer. And so I found an associate's program who could roll those credits over and that I could get a condensed like course. I didn't want to do the traditional way of going to school. That wasn't going to work for me. And so I took those credits and I finished my associates in that year. I finished the bachelor's the next year, finished a master's the following year. And during the master's program, I was asked to be an adjunct professor for Mercy College during this time from that dean because, Kara, I was so driven. I had 3 math classes. I had a calculus class, a algebra class, everything, and they wouldn't normally allow a student to do that, but they approved me to do it because I was so gung-ho. And I was off the charts because I was so upset that they wouldn't give me that job and I had something to prove. And so they wound up giving me the job because the guy with the degree didn't do the position any justice.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. So you
He flubbed it up.
well, you said that I was past tense. I was so driven. What do you feel about how driven you are right now, my dear?
I really feel like I've slowed down. Like I tell people, I'm like, if you think I'm like moving now, you should have saw me like 20 years ago. This year makes 20 years of me owning my own real estate brokerage. And that came about because I was fired at 9 a.m. from my corporate job, and my husband was fired at 10 a.m. from the same organization. We were wrongfully terminated. And so I had to kick it into gear once again 20 years ago. That's why I said 20 years ago, that Tameka, I was on fire. And that's how I became in the top 1% of sales and MLS president and all these things because I had to replace that income. And in a city where I didn't know anybody.
So you went straight through, you got your PhD. About what age are you at this point?
Well, I didn't get the doctorate until I moved to Atlanta. And I went straight through and got my master's degree. When I got recruited to move to Atlanta, I was still in my 20s. So I was around 25 when by the time I was 25, I had got all the degrees out the way, the masters, and the organization I was working for, I would have to travel 75% of the time. So I did the research to find a doctorate program that was online and that would allow me to kind of do my work while I was stuck in these airports and everything else. And that's when I went ahead and did that part of the education, was when I was working the full-time job in and out of Atlanta. I had the 2 kids, had moved out of New York, and I had all this time in the airports to get it done. So that's when I got it done. And I was around 28 when I completed that.
Wow. Okay. So your master's and your PhD are both in business, correct?
Yeah, everything is in business. Even though I didn't start out in business, I started out in psychology when I first went to St. John's. And as I was sitting there after my uncle passed, and I said, everything is a business. Everything is a business, and I'm really good at helping people with their businesses. I had helped my then coworker, who is now my husband, create his nonprofit, and I did all the paperwork and did all the work to put it together. And I just kept saying everything is a business, even a nonprofit. a hospital, a restaurant. Everything is a business. So if I go into the business field, I can be a lot more valuable to business owners, to myself. So everything is in business.
Whew, girl, and you are so valuable. I feel like we need 10 podcasts to fit it all in. So it kind of give me, well, first off, you mentioned that your husband had a nonprofit. I am curious, what is his nonprofit? Is it still going?
His back then, when I met my husband, I was 18, and he had just joined the organization as a phys ed director, and he had studied in New Mexico and stayed there for 10 years. And so he just felt that the kids in the Bronx and in the city would have better experiences in sports if they lived in New Mexico with a host family. So he wanted to create a nonprofit that sent youth to New Mexico to live with a host family, and so that they could go to school, get grades, have the support of a well-rounded family, and go on to play, sports. And that's what we did. And we did that and sent numerous youth to school. Some of them played overseas. We did all the fundraising and all that. And so that was what we did for quite a few years.
Wow, that is super intense and very cool. And of course, my heart is in New Mexico, and so is me. Okay, so now let's get back to, well, all that's going on in the background. Let's get back to your business. You started a basic brokerage 20 years ago. Things have changed a little bit in 20 years.
Well, and that's the thing, Cara. I didn't start a basic brokerage because I decided that I was going to create a brokerage that wasn't like what the other brokerages were doing. So I was going to start a brokerage. With my head said, start a brokerage that works for investors, because I was an investor when I started this brokerage. Most brokerages aren't really focused on the investor per se. They're focused on, a traditional sale with a seller and a buyer, and not necessarily focused on the investor. And so that's what I did. I started a real estate firm that was focused on investors. And we also wanted agents who wanted to be investors as our agents in our office. And that's what really put us out there and allowed us to do so many different things. So that's how I got my Freddie Mac contract and Fannie Mae contracts, and worked with all the developers here in the market that I started in. So I didn't come in saying, oh, I'm going to do traditional sales. No, I went to developers saying, let me help you develop your project. What is it you need? You need money? So I would go and fundraise. I would fundraise $500,000 for one developer so he could have cash on hand to finish his developments. And once those developers got word of that I could fundraise, remember, I learned how to fundraise and find money at an early age. They said, well, oh, yeah, you can join a team. Yes, now, yeah, if you want the listings and be able to sell them, no problem. So that's how I got into that market. Was I didn't come in as a traditional real estate agent.
No, and it sounds like you brought so much value to the table that there would never be. And in the news everywhere right now, everyone's talking about realtors' commissions. After you bring that kind of value, I am sure no one ever questioned your commission amount.
No one ever questioned a commission. And I would tell people all the time, I don't work on commission.
Go ahead and explain that, please.
So depending on the client, I work different programs. And I'll give you an example. If my clients, I work with attorneys. So if I'm working with attorneys, normally I'm on a retainer. I'm speaking their language. And so I may be on a retainer for someone. I may be under contract for a developer to acquire land for them. I don't work on a per commission, you know, a way of doing things. There's so many ways that you can make money in real estate that people come in with this small, narrow mind of they have to work on this commission. Another example is when I do work with SBA or AT&T, that was one of my contracts. They would pay me per employee that I was working with, not on a commission, but per employee that I was educating as well.
Okay, so one of the things that you said when we were in Texas was that there wasn't enough inventory and you knew you needed to create inventory. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes, it was roughly 20 years ago. Now I've had the brokerage 20 years, but I've had a real estate license for 22. But around 20 years ago, little more than that, I was introduced to some opportunities to teach for the National Association of Realtors, and a couple of programs. One was housing opportunities, and those courses were designed to for me, and they paid me to go around and tell real estate agents of how you can work with your communities and developers and builders to help create more inventory. Because if nothing is done, there won't be enough affordable housing in any major city. And we knew that 20 years ago. I was teaching that 20 years ago. And so, and here we are. It really made sense for me to start finding ways to bring inventory into new markets and helping other people do the same thing. So that's why, when people will talk about, oh, I'm like, I'm never running behind a listing. I'm creating inventory. So I develop internationally now, mostly because I saw the writing on the wall of what was happening to entrepreneurs who were working to have like their own individual units. And if people are paying attention, you'll see that the small landlords are being squeezed. It is not what it was 20 years ago when you had landlords just enjoying having 20, 30 properties, the individual, the mom and pop landlords. That group is being squeezed out by so many variations, so many things going on. And we need more inventory. Our country does not have enough housing for the people who are here. We don't have enough housing for seniors. We don't have enough housing for, young people coming out of college. And what they're doing is in every major city near you, they're building apartments. So as affordable or attainable housing. And what's happening is the kid coming out of college is not able to build any wealth.
Okay, so there is not enough housing, and your answer was to develop internationally. What was your first excursion into international investing?
It started when I was really early. I had went on I forgot, my husband and I we went to do something, and I'll tell people my husband and I used our money from our wedding to buy our first investment property, and we purchased the property in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. And since then, it's always been about, you know, we know that you can by acquiring real estate is the best way for us to build wealth. And so we were going everywhere we would go, whether it was a vacation or otherwise, we were always looking at real estate. And so I came across some property in Mexico and wanted to know the process of that. And so that's where it really started. And at the same time, I'm still, you know, too, I didn't know enough about international things. So I just kept doing research while I was still developing and rehabbing houses in the States and, creating enlarging my own personal portfolio. And at that time, we had real estate in probably 6 or 7 states, New York and New Mexico and Kansas City and, other places. And I just started venturing out once I saw I really got focused on international investing over the last 3 to 4 years because what I saw was the cities like Atlanta saying, investors can only own two Airbnbs now. So when you see that happening, and I started digging deeper into what was going on, and more people are vacationing in places, and there's, on record, 9 million Americans living somewhere outside of the US. And I'm going, well, who's helping them do these transactions and who's doing what? And we have very large expat groups in a lot of these other areas. And so I was like, well, why not go there and develop inventory for my investors who want to find something that's, great weather, cheaper to build, all of those kind of things. And they're also thinking about where they're going to retire, because I know I paid a bill of $16,000 per month for my uncle's memory care unit as a senior. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could go live on a cruise ship for less than that.
I could definitely build a couple of properties for him to be somewhere else and to have a nurse for that kind of money. And I just don't see us, we're not going to catch up. We're 10 years behind on what we have to have built. I'm a commissioner for my housing authority in the city I'm in, and we just won't be able to catch up. So my contribution is also to help with the issue. You have to be the change you want to see.
Amen, sister. I love it. So let me go here. I saw on something in the research I was doing on you that you could get started investing with you for as little as $1,000. What is that about?
That's the deposit. So here's the thing. I work in four current markets, and it's about 10 of them, but the four active ones we have that I work in Mexico, Dominican Republic, Ghana, and right now we're working some things out in Guyana. But in Mexico, I work with the largest land developer in Mexico called Ciudad Maderas. And what they do is they build cities. Okay, so they've been around 40 years. They've got 28 completed projects. And right now I'm on the Caribbean side of the projects. So in Cancun and Merida, you can put down as little as $500 to $1,000 to secure your lot. And you can make payment plans. We have payment plans in place, no credit checks or any of those kind of things. And you can pay off your lot or add a house to it, kind of a thing. And the developer is doing all the owner financing.
Wow, that is huge.
So the smallest house, for example, right now is $63,000.
Can you say that again?
$63,000.
No way. And do you own the home, own it, or does the government own it and you're leasing it, or you own it?
No, you own it. There's like people always, there's this misconception that you can't own in other countries. And that's not true. Just like they come to the US and can own, we can go to other countries and own. It's just the process of how you have to do it. So, for example, you would own your property in the Dominican Republic. You can own that straight out in your name. Not a problem, doesn't have to be in anything. In Mexico, you want to own your property in your trust. So just each jurisdiction is just a little different. And I own in every place I sell, I own. So that's why I tell people I go through the process, and I have real estate offices in all of those jurisdictions that I work in, because I put teams in those cities. And I also train real estate agents on how they can sell and buy and invest internationally as well. Because places, and that's kind of the reason why I put those offices up, because I wanted the US citizens I was working with to have the protections and the oversight of how things work, because in some of these jurisdictions real estate licenses don't exist. Like, they don't have a real estate license governing body. You don't need a real estate license. There's no MLS. So the safest way for my investors to do it was for us to be on the ground with the jurisdiction and company set up and a staff and team.
Very cool. So some of the basically cities, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you're working and building with other people, they look like they're very safe. Like is are there HOA fees that go along with that so that the property will be maintained for years to come?
Correct. All of the properties we develop or that we work with other developers in, that's one of the criteria because, we make sure. Again, I tell people all the time, if my daughter or son can't go to the property, then I'm not going to buy in that jurisdiction or in that neighborhood or that property. Safety is very important to us. I work with a majority of women who are looking to build their portfolios and things like that. So a lot of times you'll see double gated communities. And that's why they do have an HOA. And for example, there's security at the front entrance. And then once you go into your section of the development, there's also security there because these development projects, like the one we're doing in Mexico, there are 22,000 lots.
22,000?
When I say a city, I mean a city.
Girl. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's in Cancun?
So we have one in Cancun
Wow.
and one in Merida. And so I tell people, like, I have a tour in May. I normally do a tour every other month, and we do our big conference. And we have the opening of and the groundbreaking of the Cancun one in September at our Teach at the Beach conference. So I invite everyone that wants to learn and come and if you want to buy or they want to learn how to sell international, I'm certifying people at that conference as well. And that's what I do. I have to, there was no way that I could sit and watch, or be in the same bucket as everyone else, in real estate. There's too much of it to go around. And that's why I always tell people I never feel like I'm in competition with anyone because no one's doing what I'm doing.
Well, it is so bold. I mean, like, seriously, if you were able to step outside of yourself and look at what you're doing, you would be freaked out and reaching back and patting yourself on the back because, wow, girl.
Not yet. Not yet, Kara. I'm not done.
Okay. So what's the goal? What's 5 years? What's the next 5 years look like for you?
Right now, I am working on my pitch for a hotel in Dominican Republic. I'm building a hotel and beachfront hotel. And so for the next 5 years, I want to have 2 to 3 hotels in that time. And including in all the cities I'm developing in, I might as well have a hotel there as well so that we can have these conferences. And so my 5 year plan is to elevate more of my investors who started playing this game of Monopoly with those greenhouses that now they can move those into those red ones. We're playing a real game of Monopoly around here. And I'm going to enjoy these 5 years. I'm an empty nester. I've closed more than 3,100 real estate transactions. And so I just want to educate more people to get out and be different and, go for it. So I've done commercial, I've been MLS president, realtor of the year, all these things. So why not move into, hotels and resorts while the opportunity is there?
I love it. I love it. I love you. I love the way you think. You've also written one, two, three, four, five, 6 books.
Oh, you've been doing research.
Wow. Where, like, oh my gosh. Your husband must be an amazing man.
Well, he says that when he asked my dad for my hand in marriage, my dad told him, he said, sure, but please understand that she will always be doing a lot of things, but they're organized things. So don't get discouraged, but she's a go-getter. And he knew that and he worked with me. And so when he first, around 6 months into us working together, he pulled me to the side and he says, you don't know this yet, but you're supposed to be my wife. And I was like, oh, that was the corniest pickup line I ever heard. And I didn't date him or any of those kind of things. We just worked together. And it was years later did it did I realize he's probably right, so he is, very patient with me and all the things, but he actually enjoys them because it kind of, I tell people all the time, when I'm bored, I'm writing a book or learning a language or harassing my husband. So he's like, okay, go, you can just go and I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go do something else. And now that the kids are out of the house, it's like, okay, I have this time and this energy to do more. And so my more over the next 5 years will be focusing on the hedge funds and my fund and the hotel.
Oh, how exciting. All right. So for our listeners who want, out of all the books that you've written, which of the books do you think would be most beneficial for our audience is a lot of entrepreneurs. What do you think would be the best book that you've written for them to start with?
I think people underestimate all the areas in real estate that they can be doing things in. Like one of the areas that, and so I'll just say it's the 114 ways to make money in real estate, finding a niche that pays. It was 99, and then I had some guest writers come in and do 100, and they just added a few. I didn't have time to kind of revamp the entire book, but I think that one gives them an idea. It's a quick read for people just to kind of go, oh, I didn't think about that. These are jobs and things within real estate that I could be doing with my skill set that's not just a traditional real estate agent. So one of the things, for example, Kara, that I loved doing was when I was on the commercial lending side of the business and helping people find financing, because a license wasn't required. So if you could sit and think of your client that you've helped buy 10 properties, your investor. I took it a step further. I helped them put their packages together, and then I went and found them funding. And so when I found them funding, then I also was able to originate that, and get paid by the bank or by the client, to do that for work I was already going to do anyway, because you're gathering this information to begin with. But most people just don't know that those kinds of opportunities exist. So that's one of the things I started doing, was training professionals on how to be commercial lenders themselves, commercial brokers.
My goodness. And you also train, it seems that your bent is to train women more so than men. What is that about?
I think it's an attraction thing more so. So I do get men who come. Most of the men who come though have lately, it's been really interesting. It's been spouses of the women, because they want to know, what is this going on? Like, who is this person that you're listening to? And then they get there and they're like, why don't you have a men's group? And we're like, it's not that it's a women's group. It's just that men, I just don't attract necessarily men. And here's one of the reasons. I believe I'm a huge advocate for women, because 3 out of 4 of us, Kara, happen to retire broke. And mostly that is because we have spent so much time taking care of families. We take care of the kids until they're 21, 25, or whenever. We take care of our parents when they age. We take care of our spouses. And when you look back and you realize that you didn't spend the equivalent of that time investing in anything, most women who are getting to the age of 50 don't have anything for retirement. And so, me being able to say, here's a hotel you can invest in, here's a Hilton or a Marriott that you can invest in and just get your returns and use the perks and rewards. Those are the kinds of investments I'm doing now. So, I think that's a lot of it, because I see a lot of real estate agents who are 50 and 55 who want to retire and they can't retire because they never purchased real estate, or they were busy helping everybody buy real estate. And as you know, Kara, you make 100,000, you spend 100,000. If you're not conditioned to buy and add real estate on or invest in something, you just look up in 10 years and it's gone.
It goes so quickly. Okay. So someone could invest with you and not buy their own house in the Dominican Republic, which might be way overwhelming to them at the moment, right?
Correct.
Until they kind of ease their way into it. So they can invest it with you in hotels and other things, and it be a genuinely passive investment.
Correct.
And does the investment pay monthly, or is it at some point you'll get a big chunk?
Quarterly.
Quarterly. Okay. Okay. So they can invest that way. Or they can buy a home in Cancun or the DR. Or what if someone wants to buy someplace like Costa Rica? Can you help them?
Yes, so we have an affiliate that's in Costa Rica. Costa Rica, and again, depending on what area, we've been doing a lot of business in St. Teresa's, and that market is just blown up. So we do have within our program, I created a program called International Sales Agents, and that's where people can go to get certified to sell in those places. So each area, we have an ambassador for each one of those areas. So typically, if they're looking for a single house or a development project, then I would connect them to our ambassador for that market.
How fun. Oh my goodness. I literally, I wasn't kidding, guys, when I told you this podcast could take days to do. So we have to wrap it up at some point, but I sure hope that you will come back and be with us again.
Absolutely.
Tameka, if you can leave us with some advice from someone who grew up in the Bronx with addict parents, which I had alcoholic parents, so we can relate on that. And your shirt says it all. Can you show your shirt here? But did you die? But did you die? They come and they whine to you and they're complaining, and that's your response?
I'm like, I let them go because I always tell them you got 15 minutes to whine, and then we have to come up with a plan of action because life still keeps going. So if I could tell people one thing is that your life already has a purpose on it, right? And so, but if you quit, you may never find what that purpose is. So for me personally, I'm going to stay prayerful. I'm going to surround myself with the best possible people that I can get around me. I'm going to surround myself with people who have gifts and talents that I don't have, and then pour into them so that they can pour into me. And then we're going to keep on moving because I never want to have and leave this earth with any regrets of anything I ever wanted to do that I never got to do because I was scared or it was too hard. I'm not going to leave here with any regrets, Kara.
I love that. So you have a lot of relationships. I've heard it said countless times, no one succeeds alone. Would you agree with that?
That I 100% agree with that. Every day, all day, it's all based on relationships.
It totally is. So, very honored to get to work with you at BCG Coaching. If someone wants to coach with you, what are some of the areas that you specialize in and you do one-on-one coaching with?
Nowadays, it is really on the international piece. So, and brokerages. So if you are an independent broker or independent agent or an agent who wants to open their own brokerage, those are the two areas I'm working in. So that's where I'm staying in that box.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Any last words of advice for our listeners before we regretfully let you leave and get on with your life?
We just have to know that there's always a higher being and our steps are already ordered. So when you're faced with fear, or faith, you have to go with the faith and we're going to keep pushing.
Amen. I love it, girlfriend. Thank you so much for joining us.
All righty. Thank you, Kara. See you later.